the Steam Deck OLED and the Nintendo Switch 2. Two different handheld consoles, but which one should you get? This question isn't exactly easy to answer. The truth is, both of these handheld consoles are excellent. They both perform very well, but each is better than the other for many different reasons. For a simple answer, get the Steam Deck OLED instead. This is the more practical choice, especially if you already have games on Steam. Let's get the price out of the way first. The Steam Deck OLED currently costs $770, and that's with 1 terabyte of storage. You can expand this with an SD card, or you can replace the current SSD with a larger 2 terabyte one, but you'd have to install an operating system on it. For simplicity's sake, just install an SD card. The Nintendo Switch 2 currently costs $499, and that comes with 256 gigabytes of internal storage, which is also expandable with an SD card. However, you'll have to request an invite to buy the Switch 2, since it's a high-demand item. Now, let's talk about both of these devices. The Nintendo Switch 2 is a more portable handheld, as the Steam Deck is a little larger than the Switch 2. Both consoles are, however, very lightweight. When it comes to actual comfort of using these devices, it will, of course, depend on your preference. The Nintendo Switch 2 has a much flatter back, while the Steam Deck has a more controller feel, which I personally think is much more comfortable to use. That being said, the Steam Deck is more of a personal device, while the Switch 2 is one for sharing. The controllers for the Switch 2 are detachable, making playing with a friend much easier. Both have a touchscreen, but the Steam Deck has 2 touchpads, which might be useful for you. The Steam Deck, as mentioned previously, can be used to play the games you already have in your Steam account, but you can also play some other games with emulation. The Switch 2, while it doesn't support emulation, has a lot of Nintendo exclusive games, but it can also play tons of other games available on the store, which you can also find on the Steam Deck. Games like Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher 3, Skyrim, and many more. For this, if you want to play Nintendo exclusive games while being able to play other games, the Switch 2 is great. The Steam Deck might have a greater variety of games, however. When it comes to performance, the Switch 2 performs slightly better than the Steam Deck, but not by much. You can still play the same games on both consoles, and the performance will be quite similar. The Switch 2 uses an LCD screen, which is honestly not bad and will still look great for a handheld console. The Steam Deck OLED uses an OLED screen, of course, which means the picture quality should be much better thanks to deeper blacks and great contrast ratios. The Steam Deck OLED has a resolution of 1280 by 800 with a refresh rate of 90 Hz, which isn't as high as the Switch 2's 1920 by 1080 resolution and a refresh rate of 120 Hz. Both devices can output their displays for an external monitor. The Switch 2 can output up to 4K at 60 Hz, while the Steam Deck can display up to 8K 60 Hz or 4K at 120 Hz. Now let's talk about battery life. The Switch 2 uses a 5220 mAh battery, which gives you a battery life of around 2 to 6 hours, while the Steam Deck OLED uses a 6470 mAh battery, providing a battery life of around 3 to 12 hours according to Steam. Of course, the Steam Deck's battery life was measured under a controlled environment, so take it with a grain of salt. As for the Nintendo Switch 2, the battery life is an estimate and will still depend on what you play and how you use it. Finally, let's talk about ports. Both of these consoles have a micro SD card slot, but the Switch 2 requires a micro SD express card. The Switch 2 has 2 USB Type-C ports. The bottom port can be used specifically for charging and for the Switch 2 dock, while the top port can be used for accessories or for charging as well. It also has a 3.5mm audio port. The Steam Deck only has one USB Type-C port and one 3.5mm audio jack. So which one should you actually get? On a personal note, I would choose the Steam Deck OLED just because I can play the games I have on my Steam account. However, if you want to try something different, or if you want to enjoy family-friendly games and play with friends and family, then I definitely get the Nintendo Switch 2 instead. If you're interested, you may check out the links in the description box below, or simply just scan this QR code to check it out on Amazon right now. This has been Marty, and I'll be seeing you on the next video. Cheers!